Hello everyone, DarkOfAllTrades here. Today, I'm going to be responding to a video on the channel of Imran Hussein Epistemics titled, Angry Atheist Proves God Exists! True story. This video is a bit over 4 minutes and seems to be taken from a public talk this gentleman, who I will call Imran, as I assume that is his name, did recently. If there is interest, and it is interesting, I can make more videos on this talk, but for now, let's check out his true story.
When the atheist comes to you and he asks you, give me evidence for God's existence. Prove to me God exists. Ask him a simple question. Okay, Mr. Atheist, I'll address you. But hold on a second. When you ask me the question about God's existence, you are assuming that you have the ability, if I give you an answer, you have the ability to process what I say and try to understand the truth of it.
This is correct. We're off to a good start. In logic, we assume the 3 laws of logic: identity, non-contradiction, and excluded middle. While we can't solve the problem of hard solipsism, we cannot demonstrate that we even exist or that what we experience is reality. In order to have a meaningful conversation, we grant that we are generally experiencing reality, and while we cannot be 100% certain anything exists, we assume that our senses are generally reliable for determining facts about reality. If challenged, we can corroborate with other people to ensure we are all experiencing the same thing, and from there, we make a determination of the facts. So yes, we assume that because I am a thinking agent, I have the ability to process what you say and can try to understand and evaluate the truth of it.
On atheism, ask him, what is truth?
I use another YouTuber named Apologia's definition of truth being, quote, a spectrum measuring the extent to which a proposition conforms to reality as adjudicated by predictive power, end quote. So with this, I have a definition of truth.
They don't have a definition of truth. They don't.
I literally just gave it. Apologia posted it clearly and has been using it in his videos since at least January of 2019, so even if there are differences in individuals, there is a clear definition.
Atheists claim to be humanists. And for me, that's a contradiction. Okay, think about this. Recently, I'll tell you a very interesting story.
I am super skeptical of a religious person's stories of how they met an unnamed atheist at some unspecified time and totally stumped them with these questions. Even if I grant that it is the case, I don't know who you spoke to and what level of their expertise is on epistemology or philosophy. Not saying it didn't happen, but all we have is your word on everything that happened.
Me and Brother Mohsin, we went to Speaker's Corner, but we don't go inside speak. I try to stay out of it now because it could get very aggressive sometimes. The discussions, it becomes pointless, right? It becomes debate, arguments, and just wasteful discussion. So we found a brother there, atheist guy. We took him out, we took him to a coffee shop. We sat down, started a discussion with him, right?
If you prepare questions and ask a random, unsuspecting atheist and take their inability to answer your questions immediately in the moment to be a good example of how you can totally beat an atheist in an argument, then okay. You can ambush people and strut around when they can't answer you. I am responding mostly off the cuff, but I can take the time to research anything you ask of me. Taking time to examine claims will generally help one come to a better conclusion about those claims.
He said, I don't feel it. I said, okay. We had a discussion about truth. He couldn't really define truth.
Okay, clearly you're not talking to someone who is remotely experienced in logic. Most people could give a basic definition of truth like, what is real, or what lines up with reality. Maybe the guy was flustered, I don't know, and I don't have his side on the story.
And he was making all of these ideas about truth. He said truth is relative to what's, to what's physically observable, and all of these sort of strange ideas, yeah?
That sounds like a definition of truth that you said he couldn't define. You're contradicting yourself here in your own story.
And I said to him, okay, let me ask you a question. Are there moral truths? Meaning, are there things that are objectively morally wrong?
That depends on what you mean by moral and morality. As I often say, morality is based on the well-being of sentient creatures. By this definition, once we agree on the goal of well-being, then yes, there are things that are objectively morally wrong.
He said, I don't believe in morality.
So you were talking to a moral nihilist? That is separate from atheism. One can believe in a god and still be a moral nihilist. Maybe you're talking with a moral non-cognitivist. This gets into meta-level philosophy, which I don't particularly care for, so if you want more information, check out the Encyclopedia of Philosophy on this topic.
I don't believe there are moral truths. So I said, wow, that's interesting. So if I said to you, killing an innocent child, is that objectively, is that wrong or right? I mean, every human being will say it's wrong. Yeah? Even the atheist will say it's wrong.
I don't think that everyone would say this. While I may think it is wrong, there are psychopaths and sociopaths who would disagree. Even some extremists from certain religions would say that it is not necessarily wrong. Even your God doesn't say it is wrong, as if your holy books are true, he commands it in some situations. Even if I grant this is an appeal to popularity fallacy, simply because everyone agrees something is true does not make it true.
But he was really trying to be clever. He said, no, you know what? I don't believe in morality. I said, fine, you don't believe in morality. I said, okay, if someone came to you, and I had to use a crude example. I said, if someone went to your mother tonight and slapped your mother across the face, how would you feel? Shouldn't make a difference. You don't believe in moral truths. There's no right or wrong. He got angry. He started to swear. Yeah, he started to get really angry. I said, hold on a second, but you don't believe there's morality. And he's so frustrated. I said, look, you know what's happening? Your fitra, your nature is screaming out one thing, but here you're trying to justify something else. You're living a contradiction.
I am not a moral nihilist or non-cognitivist. However, I am not convinced that it is necessarily a contradiction. Moral nihilists and other moral non-cognitivists can still have emotions. Consider the colloquial idea of karma. By this, anything that happens is deserved. There is no moral evaluation needed for this. If we take the basic concept of cause and effect, emotions are a reaction to something that has happened. Are emotions good or bad? They are neither. We may generally associate happiness with good and anger with bad, but it isn't always the case. According to an article on the Science and Non-Duality website, quote, there is no intrinsic goodness or badness of an emotion merely because of its positivity or negativity respectively, end quote. A link to this article is in the description.
And this is what they do. They live a contradiction. And all we have to do, brothers, is point these things out to them. Point these things out to them. And they don't like to talk about these things because they can't make sense of these things. They may claim we're moral. Some things are right. Sometimes they come to Muslims and say, look, your tradition says this. I disagree with this. This is wrong. Ask them, okay, you think it's objectively wrong? Do you believe in objective morality? They'll get stuck because they don't have an anchor.
I argue that I not only have an anchor in well-being, but my anchor is on better ground than what you espouse, Imran. I can demonstrate the effects of the actions one would deem moral or immoral. Can you do the same in your worldview? You can't demonstrate the effect an action has on your God's mood or what your God thinks of you.
There is no anchor for them. Remember, what's in the beginning of atheism? Their philosophy. Blind, random, dead physical processes.
Like most or all apologists, of course, Imran applies more to atheism than what it is in order to try to make it easier to attack. Since this point isn't very relevant for the sake of the video, I'll keep this brief. This depends on definitions. I'll try to be as charitable as I can here. Blind, not guided. Well, this is not quite the case. Natural selection guides living things to grow and change. Even our understanding of philosophy has changed over the years. Why has it changed? What is the mechanism for improving our understanding of philosophy? Random. I can grant that changes are random, but what sticks around is not random. What sticks around is what best fits into the environment. Dead. What does this mean? What is a dead process? Do you mean not alive? There is likely not an alive process anywhere. The best I can find on this is the 6 biological processes all living things do, so probably not what he means here. Processes aren't alive. I am cool with that. Physical. If he is referring to the physical laws of the universe, then I may accept this, but not all atheists do. There are atheists who believe in supernatural things like ghosts and souls and cosmic energy that affects you based on what time you were born. So, at best, I accept that an atheist philosophy would accept maybe blind, random, not alive processes. He is so far off base, though, he may be overgeneralizing for the sake of time, but it gets to the point of being wrong.
That's it. Where are you going to get morality from that?
From the effects actions have on reality, specifically from the effects on well-being. We get morality mainly from human evolution. People who lived in a society where it is okay to randomly kill people tended to not live very long. Those societies died out, and the people who thought it was not okay to randomly kill other people passed down their genes more often. Natural selection at work.
Where are you going to get truth from that?
From the evaluation of things as they conform to reality as adjudicated by predictive power. We take whatever claim or proposition and check it with reality through any number of means, such as the scientific method.
Where do these concepts come from? It doesn't make sense.
This seems like a strange question. Is Imran asking where concepts come from? Concepts are the sorts of things that get grasped, possessed, or understood in coming to have beliefs, and ultimately knowledge, about the world. Immanuel Kant says, concepts are rules for constructing or organizing images. The idea is debated, but generally concepts are abstract ideas that comport to a thing. They're conceived in the mind, so they come from minds and are not external things.
So before they even try to argue against Islam, ask them, look, justify these tools that you're using. These are blessings from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that you're using, and then you're trying to deny Allah.
Some sweet question begging here. You can't assume Allah exists in order to win a debate on whether Allah exists or not.
So why say the atheist, look, the fact that you have the ability to try and deny Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala proves that Allah exists.
Still begging the question, maybe it's easier to understand if it's put into a formal syllogism. 1. You have the ability to think and reason. 2. Allah gives you the ability to think and reason. 3. Therefore Allah exists. In order to accept premise 2, you have to assume the conclusion.
Because you're showing you have the ability of the intellect. You can use rational faculties. That shows Allah exists. Because you can't account for these things without Allah.
Well, we've moved from begging the question to a plain old argument from ignorance. I don't know, therefore Allah. Even with Allah, you can't account for these things without appealing to magic. If I grant your premise that Allah exists and that I have the ability to think and reason, you still need to show that the ability to think and reason necessarily comes from Allah and not from another source you don't know about. And even if you could show that it is even possible, you would have to show how it comes from Allah. You need to show the mechanism used to grant these things.
Yes, you have them. I'm not saying you don't. But without Allah, on a worldview such as atheism, you can't account for these things. It doesn't make sense.
Simply because you don't understand it doesn't mean it doesn't make sense. Even with Allah, it doesn't make sense. The facts of reality are:
the universe is under no obligation to make sense to any of us.
That's it for this video. Did Imran bring any new points that weren't dealt with hundreds of years ago? No. Did he tell a convincing story that definitely happened? No again. If it even did happen something like what he says it did, there are so many issues with the story and the character in the story that it is difficult to believe, nor is it indicative of what even the average atheist believes. Imran, you don't understand the atheist position, which, on anything other than the existence of a god, doesn't actually exist. An atheist can believe in literally anything other than a god. So what did you think? Do you think Imran knows more than I give him credit for on these topics? Was his story convincing to you, or do you think he does what every other apologist does and puts up a straw man of an atheist to make it easier to attack? Leave a comment below. I would love to read your thoughts. As always, if you like this kind of content, you can demonstrate that it is truth by hitting the like button and subscribe to show Imran that I am more than just a concept. And remember to keep learning.